Are you ready for the weekend yet? We have events, news, and a guest for you to enjoy this Lake Life weekend. Hello and welcome to another episode of Lake Life Weekend Podcast. I'm Dirk, I'm your host, and it is already approaching weekend 34. Lots going on still in this summer season. It's getting a little chilly, but that's okay. Stay tuned for our interview with Brittney Johnson, a very interesting, young, ambitious lady that I met in Vegas past weekend at the parade, we had a float in there and she was behind us and I started talking and it was really interesting. I wanted to share her opinions and reasons for becoming a candidate for a political office. So stay tuned for all this here in our interview part. This weekend we have Potato Days in Barnesville coming up. Actually, my little imaginary hometown, I should say. It's where I went to school as a foreign exchange student 20 years ago. So my heart always beats for Barnesville. So a nice little place. Maybe we see you there. We have a little booth and all those things. Check out our website for daily updates, events, stories, road trips. It's road trip season coming up. The weather allows us to do a couple more hiking trips. There's lots of opportunity in our state parks nearby and around. So please use our website. I'm happy you tuned in again because we have a growing listenership and that makes me happy. Feel free to email us at hello@lakelifeweekend.com with your ideas or critique, suggestions. Very much appreciate your feedback. Now, I don't want to keep this any longer from our interview. Enjoy Brittney Johnson and have a wonderful weekend ahead. Hello and welcome to our interview part. I'm here with Brittney Johnson. Hi, Brittney.
Hi.
Brittney is actually the candidate for the DFL for the District 8. No, A8 you said.
8A.
8A. I'm sorry, I had it right. For House of Representatives. Mm-hmm. And you are campaigning right now. And I met you, actually, a little backstory. Just last weekend in Vegas at Looney Days. You were part of the parade and I asked you what you were doing and you shared it with me, and I learned that you are definitely part of Lake Life because you're willing and working on representing the residents of our county, Otter Tail, the western half, to represent and give them the voice in Congress, let's say.
State legislature.
I'm sorry, yeah. This is all new to me. We will clarify all those details later. Thank you. But I also learned that you're actually working in the Otter Tail Water and Soil
and Water Conservation District.
Perfect. So there's so much lake life that you can share. And because you have a real expertise, and that I think also goes hand in hand, your connection with agriculture goes in hand in hand with your reasoning for campaigning and wanting to represent. So I would love to hear who you are a little bit, where you're from, are you from Minnesota, and then a little bit about your work maybe, and then definitely we talk about politics for once.
Yeah.
So welcome. Tell
Thanks.
us who are you?
Yeah. So, like you said, my name's Brittney.
Mm-hmm.
I'm running for the Minnesota House for District 8A. Yeah, and so just a little bit about like where I came from. My family's originally from Barnesville. So
my hometown.
Yeah, exactly. I love Barnesville, right? Potato Days.
Coming up?
Yeah, which I won't be able to make it, but hopefully at some other point in my life I can. Mashed potato wrestling, like you can't go wrong, right? No, so then I grew up down in Shoreview, but my aunt and uncle farm in Rolog, so I spent a lot of time there as a kid, and then we also had a trailer on Big Cormorant Lake, which is actually up in Becker County. And so I knew that I wanted to come back here because this place is amazing, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yes. And
so you grew up in the cities.
Yeah.
And you always knew you wanted to come back.
Yeah, because I wanted to farm.
Okay.
And I'm also kind of a lake rat a little bit.
Okay.
So yeah, I came back up here. I got my degree from the University of Minnesota in applied plant science, which is a mix of like plant genetics and agronomy. So
okay. So what is that more like? It sounds so normal to you.
Yes.
So it's biology and a little bit agricultural science?
So like soil science, weed science, there was a fair amount, you know, the U of M plant science program focuses heavily on genetics. A lot of the kids go on to be plant breeders. I wanted to work like out in fields, and plant breeding is no longer a whole lot of working out in fields.
Okay.
So
you want to get your hands dirty.
Yes, exactly. Okay. So then I came up here and I started working at the Soil and Water Conservation District here in Perham, and I work on irrigation management. So I work with our farmers on, you know, I usually just give them a second opinion on what their fields look like, so they're not over irrigating and so they're not under irrigating.
That is a lot of detail for the average consumer, let's say, or a listener. You gave me a little bit more insight in the pre-talk. Can you explain more, just in detail, what you're working on? Because it's very interesting.
Sure. Yeah, so, I mean, there are a lot of things that people who irrigate have to think of when they decide to turn on their pivot, right? So they have to think about the crop stage that their crop is in. So, you know, corn, when it's tasseling, uses a lot more water than when it's shorter. Of course, it's a smaller plant. You have to think about the last time it rained and what the soil moisture status is like right now. And then you have to look at the forecast and kind of guess if it's going to rain or not. You have to think about some of our pivots, they only, you know, when electricity usage is really high, they can only actually run them at night. So you have to take into account, like, hey, it might take me 3 extra nights to get this whole pivot around. And, you know, some pivots take 3 or 4 days to get the whole way around, right? So you need to make sure that by the time your pivot is done going around the first time, you know, you're not running out of time on that first stuff that you irrigated. You have to worry about like pest pressure. You have to worry about your fertilizer. Have you applied fertilizer lately? If so, does it need to be watered in or not? You have to think about disease. Last year, we had white mold problems, not just in irrigated soybeans, but in dryland soybeans too. So, you know, this year we're watching that really closely. And then, you know, just making sure that you're doing a good job of not wasting water. So there's a lot of things that farmers have to think about when they're deciding to turn on their pivot. So what I do is I try and take the guesswork out of some of those variables, right? So I go and I do soil moisture samples so I can tell them how wet their soil currently is, which helps them know how much longer they have before they have to irrigate. I let them know the growth stage of their crop and how much water their crop is using at that growth stage. So then they can kind of budget out the rest of their water. So say you have a soil, stop me if this is boring.
No, it's super fascinating because you are like an extreme resource to them. So you are literally assisting the farmers.
It goes both ways because a lot of them have been irrigating longer than I've been alive.
Okay.
But, you know, I've learned a lot from them and hopefully I am a resource for them. But so, you know, you have a water holding capacity of 4 inches, right? We say that the allowable depletion is 2 inches of that, right? So if you're at 100% soil moisture, you have 2 inches of water to work with. So if you have a crop that's using 1/4 of an inch per day, that gives you 8 days before you need to irrigate, right?
That's math. I'm very quick, but you just make it sound so easy. We just believe you for now.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. I won't get any more into it.
No, it's really fascinating because I think maybe a lot of people that see young people around say like, hey, what do they actually know? And you have a very great passion for farming. You described earlier that was your dream to come back. You did that. You got a 4-year degree, I guess, in a college to work what you do, and you are actually really a resource. So I'm really fascinated. And I think it's boring, and I think it's really relevant for the community.
Yeah.
One for the farmer, but you said another keyword. Not to use too much water, because I think, and I always see those big pivots, what you just described, and I believe in Germany we don't have those things.
Oh, really? Okay.
I am of the firm belief, but I'm not 100%, but as far as I'm educated, groundwater is not just your property when you own land where it is underneath. Groundwater is everybody's water, and you, as far as I know, you cannot make a well just because of that. Here, we live on wells. It's natural to us. For me, it is fairly new, this whole thing, this whole concept. And for farmers to take away groundwater just because they own the land above, which has an immediate effect on me, and also with pretty much polluting it with fertilizers in Europe, as you may know, or even many people know, we are very concerned about what we put on the soil because we are so close by and millions of people are very dense. So if the groundwater goes then we're in big trouble. So here, tell us a little bit more, because we all live here.
Yeah.
And what happens if a farmer takes too much water?
Yeah, so that's a really good point. So when people talk about irrigation, a lot of times their concerns have to do with water quantity, like you mentioned. Like, so here in Minnesota, it's the same thing where like this state is like owns the water, right? Our water is a publicly owned resource.
Oh, it is.
It is. Yeah.
Minnesota is so very much like Germany. No, it is.
Well,
we come to that later.
There's a lot of Germans that moved here.
I feel right at home here. So okay, keep going.
That's not how it is in all the states, right? There are different states, especially out west, where water rights actually are a big deal, and you can't have things like a rain barrel off your roof because you technically don't own that water. But that's not how it works here, right? And here in this part of the state, in Otter Tail County, it's not like this across the whole state, but we don't tend to have water quantity issues. In fact, we have groundwater that's actually having like elevated levels of groundwater, which we've seen in some of the chains of lakes here.
So the water level is too high?
Yep, too high. And so that, and you know, of course, quantity is a huge concern. Like, we want to make sure that we're using the resource efficiently and we're not draining it more than it should be drained or beyond its sustainable level, right? But, you know, here we worry a little bit more about quality, like you mentioned. So the main concern we have with irrigation and quality is nitrogen. Nitrogen is a very common fertilizer that we use on a lot of our grass crops. So like corn and wheat get a lot more nitrogen than soybeans because soybeans makes its own nitrogen, right? They make their own nitrogen. And so nitrogen is really important. It's a really important component of chlorophyll, which is, if you've taken your botany lately, chlorophyll is what actually has photosynthesis happen, right? So that's how the plant grows, gets energy to grow. And so nitrogen is really important for our plants. But we want to make sure that we're applying the right amount because we have coarse soils here, which means that water moves down through them very quickly. And the nitrogen that is in our soils moves with water. There are some nutrients that don't, like phosphorus. Phosphorus sticks to the soil, and it's more of a surface water contaminant because it doesn't leach. But nitrogen will leach. And so that's...
What does leach mean?
Oh, move down through the soil profile into your groundwater. So get to the top of your field, down to the aquifer.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's something that's like a big concern with a lot of us who farm and who work in the agricultural industries. We want to make sure that nitrogen is not getting into our groundwater. We are on, in some cases, 10 to 20 to 30 year cycles as far as water goes. So it can take that long for water to get from the top of the soil down into your aquifer. That
long?
Yeah. So it really varies by region, right? And so we want to make sure that what we're doing now will actually improve water quality 10 or 20 or 30 years from now.
Because we are concerned about the future, of course, our children. And so it's a very complex, it seems very easy and just a couple components, phosphorus and nitrogen, but it's in the end it is a complex system because we are concerned about the future, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we are doing, and that's what you are helping the farmers with. Yeah. I heard about this phosphorus, but now I understand that it sticks to the soil. That's why we don't want all riprap or just tar by the lake, because otherwise it would just end up in the lake and then it gets green, right?
That's what causes a lot of our algae blooms. Is phosphorus.
Yeah.
Because it's the most limited nutrient in surface waters, right? So it's what it doesn't. Like a lack of phosphorus is what prevents algae from growing in a lot of cases here. Yeah. And like down in the Gulf of Mexico, nitrogen's actually your limiting nutrient, which is why we've seen like things like hypoxia in the dead zone. But here it's phosphorus, and so when you get phosphorus, then you get these big algal blooms, and then they soak up all the oxygen, and that's when all your fish die. So it's just we want to avoid that if we can, and we haven't had too many problems with it here, thankfully. But it's good for us to be aware of it.
Yeah, and you mentioned you wanted to farm.
Yeah.
And you just described what you're doing, your day job, I should say, maybe, as far right now. But you also have a little farm.
I do, yes. So it was 1 year in June that I got it, that I had it. And August 5th was my 1 year as far as getting sheep go. So I'm a sheep farmer. I have 7 little ewes. And so this year was my first lambing season, which was wild. It's kind of wild to have never done it before and then have a bunch of lambs. But it went really well, and everybody was happy and healthy, and they're growing fast. So, yeah.
So you have a herd of 7
ewe sheep. So
what does it mean?
Those are the female sheep.
Yep. Okay, so 7 females, and now you have 7 little lambs?
Yes, I think.
And you have a goal for the herd size, like 40, or what is the goal?
My goal is to farm full time. So to do that, I'd probably need 100 or 200, depending on how intensively I decide to manage them.
And how big is your farm?
It's 40 acres, so I'll need some more land to do that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's not a lot?
No, not really. But it's a start, right?
Absolutely. I think it's a lot of acreage, but I'm from a big city with no acreage. So 40 acres, and then is it pasture then, I assume?
Yep, so I have like probably 10 acres in pasture, another 16 that are tillable, so that's like in row crops. And then the rest is in a swamp. It's a wetland in my house.
Okay,
so,
okay.
Yeah.
And you have been operating this for a little over a year?
Yeah.
And your goal is to grow this?
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I think that sounds actually beautiful, picturesque.
It is picturesque. I know that sometimes it's not, of course. Sometimes it's not picturesque, but a lot of times I feel pretty grateful to be where I am. So,
what made you decide? You're 25 years young, and you decided last year to represent the residents of our county.
Yeah.
Correct? And may I ask what made you come to this idea?
There are a lot of things, right? So I think, first of all, there are a lot of different ways that people decide to make positive change in the world, right?
Sure.
Like a lot of people volunteer, a lot of people donate money, a lot of people are in professions where they can help people. Churches do a lot of good work, and that's always been something that's interested me. I think that a lot of people helped me when I was young. There are a lot of people in history who did work to make sure that I can be where I am, right? Because not everywhere in the world can a young woman own her own farm and live by herself. So I'm grateful for everybody who came before me to do that. So, and there are a lot of things that I'm really concerned about, like food security is something that's really important to me. And so I studied abroad in Senegal, where I learned a little bit more about how American agriculture differs from Senegalese agriculture, and some of the ways that our agricultural systems interact, right? So I came back from that experience understanding that if I wanted to see positive change in this country and also in the other countries that are developing right now, that are developing their agricultural systems, one of the best ways to do that for me would be through politics. Our political system, our government is our way that we've agreed upon to live together and try and address some of our big problems. So I think that,
absolutely.
For me, that trying to affect, people's lives positively through policy is a really good way. And then, so there were just some issues here that weren't getting addressed very well, right?
In Otter Tail County?
Yep. One I hear about a lot is healthcare. Healthcare is like too expensive for a lot of us. Another one is, so I work like you mentioned, I work full time at the Soil and Water Conservation District. And then I also work on the weekends at Fleet Farm. I'm on a leave of absence right now, obviously, to campaign. But yeah, so then working there, so many of us have to work 2 jobs to kind of make ends meet that I'm like, okay, well, it's time to address this, right? Because we have people who don't have the things they need. The American dream is gone for them despite working 60 or 70 hours a week. And I think that's a problem. And then, a lot like investing in the future, like we've talked about a little bit, making sure that we're leaving our environments and our education systems and our economy in better shape than we found it for our kids. So
no, I think that sounds all good and great. Now
but
no, but really I think we agree on many things. We would agree, I guess. But my question was, if I was to become a politician, let's say Dirk, yeah?
Vote Dirk.
No, yeah. If I was, I always think do I just want to bully through my opinion? Let's just say Dirk, or would I have had so much opportunity to meet people, and they said, Dirk, we should do this. Dirk, we should do this. And then I said, you know what? You all told me what you want to do. Should I just do it for you? So my question is, from a young politician that decides to run for office or for a position, have you heard a lot of voices? You just said, but do you think that you are responding to the voices you heard? That's
a really good question. So obviously I have my own reasons for running, right? So I had my platform written in February, and then we started door knocking in April. And so we've knocked on a lot of doors. We're almost at 3,000. And so we've had conversations with so many people who live here that it's really kind of, helped shape my platform even further to make sure that, the concerns that I hear about are actually like addressed somewhere, because there are a lot of people.
They are not?
I want to make sure that they are.
They are.
There are a lot of people who feel like nothing is getting done, that, their concerns aren't being taken seriously. And so, and quite frankly, talking to people and learning about the things that they are dealing with, and just having exposure to a lot of people who don't think the same way as me has been really, really great. I think that everybody should do it. But
you mentioned that last weekend, which kind of impressed me, because you claim it grows you, which
it does,
which I totally agree. I could see that. I can imagine that. What I think though is observing an American political arena, and with the spectacle with this circus we had a couple of years back. Let's put it this way. This is just my private opinion.
Okay.
But what I mean by that is. Campaigning in the United States is very new to me. And just to explain, in Germany, there is no individual campaigning. There's just party advertisement.
Oh, interesting.
And you just vote a party.
Oh.
So, actually every party advertisement is paid for by tax funds anyways.
Yeah.
And if there are gifts, they have to be highly declared. So, campaigning in Germany is very different than campaigning in the United States. Like I'm not judging. It's just I'm observing that, and it's just very new to me. Yeah. So when I look at it, it's just like, okay, there's one individual, just obviously decided to want to be a public figure, and I sometimes have difficulties to understand. That's why I asked you. But so you also said, hey, I wanna do this. I see it as me helping. To make change in the world for better, and then you kind of advertise, hey guys or people, I have this vision. If you like it, vote for me. That's kind of how it's approached here, right?
Yeah, I think so.
And in that process, now the trick question: when you talk to hundreds of people, a couple thousand, do you adapt your agenda, like your website? Do you kind of, or like your platform, you called it?
Yeah.
So when I want to read up on you and say, hey, what does she stand for? You
absolutely.
Okay, so
absolutely.
So what do you stand for again? Like a little bit more depth. Like, do you have 5 bullet points? Like what do you main reason? I mean, you said it a little bit, but how do you think you can help?
How do I think I can help?
Is that possible with a couple of hundred people in Congress? Like, can you really make a difference for us in Otter Tail County?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think that there are pretty easy things that we could do that would make life a little bit better. Do you want me to list some?
No, I don't want to put you on the spot. Well, okay, it's very difficult. Yeah, no, what I mean is like, it's very difficult now, I guess.
No.
But I don't even know how many people sit in the Congress.
I think they're
642 or whatever.
In the state legislature. Yeah. It's probably, I think they're like 130 something.
Okay.
They're like 60 something Senate districts and double that for the number of House.
Okay, so we actually have a very small voice. Let's say Otter Tail County has like just this little voice.
Yeah.
That maybe you or somebody else, doesn't matter, theoretically.
Yeah.
But are we that unique here compared to others? What do we need to address differently than in the Duluth area? Because we're talking state politics,
yeah,
right?
And I think a lot of the concerns are similar. I think there are a lot of people who want to be able to afford their health care, be able to drink and use clean water, to be able to have a job that allows them to work hard and then also spend time with their kids and to make sure that their kids have a better future than they did. I think those are pretty universal, and I think that, of course we have the reason I'm running for the state legislature, right, is because I want to address those problems. There are a lot of other places you can, run for office to address some of the more local issues. Like county commissioner is a great one. Soil and Water Conservation District Board is another one. But, we do have those universal issues that we need to see addressed. At the same time, we need somebody who's going to go down there and make sure that, the laws that are getting passed, the policies that are getting passed are good for the people here.
Yeah.
Right? And so we need somebody with a strong voice who can stand up to people on both sides and say, hey, this is what my community has said that they need, and how can we make that happen, right now I think a lot of people have gotten a little comfortable down there. You know, there's a strong incumbency advantage for just about everybody. And so when you have that, you know, you might not, I don't know, you know, you might not be as involved in your community as somebody who's, say, working 2 jobs. Or, you know, if you are a legislator, you have your health care pretty much afforded to you. It's like, I just got an email. Apparently it's like $30 a month to buy into the state healthcare plan, which is not the reality for a lot of people who live here.
No, and it's like, for example, my father, when, like, we have universal healthcare in Germany. I think we probably have it in all Europe, I would say. That question never arose because we just have healthcare by law, which is the only way, in my opinion. And my father, who was almost 80, when I think it was probably 4 years ago or 6 years ago, correct me if I'm wrong, time, and we had this Obamacare to come, and there was this big arguing about should we have this healthcare here in the United States. And my father just always shook his head. It's like, how can they battle something that is for the better? So he never understood why there was why was it not accepted or welcome or why do so many people, what is actually the problem in our state? Is there a lot of voices that say we don't want it because it's too expensive, or why don't we have it? But I thought actually in Minnesota we do have it. We have some plan. Is it Medica or is it?
There's a plan called Minnesota Care.
Minnesota Care, yeah. What is that about?
That's for low-income Minnesotans. It covers them. So there's also Medicaid, which is a federal program to help people afford their health care. So we have Medicaid and Minnesota Care, and those are largely directed at low-income populations, so people who are like between jobs or who are disabled who can't work. And so those aren't actually available to people in the middle income classes or the higher income classes, right? So those people get their health care through like their job or on the individual market. So what Obamacare actually tried to do, it was largely based off what Mitt Romney did in Massachusetts and on a Heritage Foundation study, is it tried to make it it's so that people had it was affordable for people to buy health care. And there was a lot of questions about whether or not that was the right way to go about doing it. And so what we had a very partisan discussion about whether or not Obamacare would work. And so we had one party that wanted to make it work and a lot of other people who didn't think that it was going to be effective. And so it ended up being just like, you know, it did some really great things like protections for pre-existing conditions, right? You don't want people to lose their insurance when they get sick. That doesn't make any sense. That's what your insurance is for. You don't want people to have lifetime caps, right? That doesn't make any sense. And you want a basic standard of care so that if you have a health insurance plan and you need an x-ray, you can get it. If you are pregnant, you can get like pregnancy care covered. Like those are just basic things that we need. And there was just no agreement on how to make that happen. And so Obamacare didn't work in some areas as well as it should have.
What I think, and now this is I'm gonna probably open a big can of worms. Just my observation, again, as always. But doctors make so much money here, yeah. And I think healthcare is so expensive because it was this, what is it called here? Free economy, you know, free market. I actually have a very good example. I am health insured here, and I flew to Germany half a year ago, and I was very sick, and I just thought I had a fever or something. So I arrived, and it even got worse. I went to the doctor, and turned out like I was very sick. I had a lung infection. I was immediately brought into the hospital, and I was stationary for 5 days in a hospital. And well, because my parents said like, no, you're not going down in the mid-level, so I was up on the upper floor. I had the professor work on me. Actually had a suite, like 2 rooms, and I was like,
this
oh
was
my
in
god.
Germany?
It was in Germany, yeah. So I was like, okay, this feels like a cruise. I was actually home for a week to enjoy my friends, and then I was in the hospital for a week, but it looked like on a cruise ship. I was like, you know what, I'm digging this. I'm just running with it.
All right.
Couple of days down, I was like, how am I going to pay for this, actually? Because I was in Germany. I was traveling. I was like, holy buckets. It's like going to cost me a fortune, so I have to capitalize on that. So I decided to write a book, yeah? As a side story. So I wrote a story which has not been published. I was thinking, like, I need to capitalize on my experience. Well, that didn't work. But my point is, I came back, and, you know, the bill for that whole trip, single room, including thinner medication, professor looking at me, it was €4,000, including emergency ambulance and the first doctor visit, which was like not even $5,000. I submitted that to my health insurance here, and because it was an urgent matter, I was covered. I have like a really good plan here. But I realized that they didn't even question it. They immediately wrote the check, and I got $5,000 to recoup it, because I have a feeling here it would have been at least 3 times as much, if not even more, because like all these services that I got there were so, and it was privately paid. It was paid in cash up front, so it was the highest they could charge.
Jeez, yeah.
So my point is, health care doesn't cost as much in the first place in Europe and Germany.
Well, I would agree with you. I mean, you guys in Germany have nonprofit health insurance plans, right?
Yes.
We don't have that here.
No, everything is profitable.
Exactly. So like and that's actually something that Obamacare did do, is it said, okay, insurance companies, you guys are for-profit entities. You have shareholders that make money off what you do. You cannot profit, like you have to spend at least 80% of your premiums on healthcare, right? But what does that mean? That means you have 20% of your premiums that aren't going towards healthcare. So 20 cents out of every dollar that you pay for your healthcare goes into some shareholder or CEO's pocket. That's a big problem, right? We also have much higher administrative costs. So the administrative costs for Medicare are like 3%, and the administrative costs for plans on the individual market can hit 16%. So when you have 16% administrative costs and you have 20% profits, like a third of your premium that you're paying doesn't even go towards your health care, which is not how it works in Germany. Like you guys, it's different. And there are a lot of reasons
we need a reformation.
Yeah,
we need a reformation.
And there are a lot of people who understand that. I think we all understand that we need to do something differently. It's just...
And we're talking health, and that's what I don't understand, because we are actually this united society, and we should care for each other. But then I always feel we are just single. We're always fighting for, like the wild.
Well, we have a long streak of individualism here in our culture, so
that's
could
very
be contributing.
Nicely put. Yeah, no, and that's really, I think that's one of the biggest cultural obstacles that I experience.
Really?
By not even, now we can go on that, but like this individualism here is in our ways, oftentimes I feel culturally, and there's a lot of explanations though why things are the way they are here. But I strongly feel that we are ready for this sense of community. Yeah. And I think a generation like yours, 25-year young people and the so-called millennial and whatnot. When I was a foreign exchange student in Barnesville, Minnesota, 20 years ago, everybody was extremely sheltered. They didn't know too much.
The internet has changed that,
and
hasn't it?
the access to information on a push button, it's rapidly growing. The interest or the access and all those things. So your generation, I think, is on the best way to help us overcome a past in the United States where we are just extremely sheltered. No, I mean.
Well, we come from our country was started by Puritans, so that's just that affects a lot of the things that we do still.
So what do you think your generation, or like why would I put my trust in you? I mean, like, I'm not that much older. but like...
Well, I will say that I think you're right about what you say about people looking for a sense of community. I think that as great as the internet has been in opening up doors for people, it's also kind of had this, like, simultaneously effect of isolating us, right? Because if you can talk to your friends online, do you go talk to your friends in person as much? I don't know. Or if you can just go hang out with people who all think the same as you and just get everything confirmed. Like, you're not building community with people who think differently. So it's easier for you to, separate yourselves into groups. Shelter again. Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. I don't know. I think that sometimes people talk about millennials like we're like kind of like a bad generation. I don't feel that that's necessarily warranted, but I don't know. I think that we have this sense of earnest compassion. So like I really do think the people who I know, and not to say that people who are older and different generations don't, but like the people I grew up with are sincerely interested in making sure that people have the opportunities that they need to be successful, and that we're taking care of each other however you want to do that, whether it's through your church or privately or through policy. I just think we have a really sincere commitment to that, and we work really hard. I think, you know, like I said, I work 2 jobs. I know a lot of people my age who are doing the same thing. We work really hard for the things that we believe in, and I don't know. I think that we need more of that.
Yeah. No, I can see that. I think that's true. What is your take? Since we're talking politics, what's your take on, like, do you know anything about the Brexit? Like, what is your like, as a U.S. observer looking at Europe and something like the Brexit? What is your feel on that? Do you have an opinion? Yeah,
so like I think that it's just, you know, we've seen this like over the last couple of years, 3 to 4 years, we've seen this movement towards instead of working together as countries to achieve like collective goals, we're starting to like splinter. I think we've seen that in a lot of areas. I think we saw it with Brexit. I think we saw it with the U.S. election in 2016. And so I have a degree in applied econ too. So that's another thing that I studied. And from like an economics point of view, like it doesn't make sense to pull yourself out of like a trading, away from like a huge trading partner, right? There's actually like a lot of studies that have been done that have said that one of the reasons why the United States has been so successful is because we have one of the largest areas of uninterrupted free trade, right? Because the states count as, like, if you count a state as its own little thing and they're all free trading with each other, and that's part of our success, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
absolutely,
you know, the European Union kind of created that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's pretty much a copy. The only difference is that, okay, go on.
Yeah, and so there were a lot of benefits towards that, and maybe, and I guess I don't really, if I was a young British person, I would love to be able to travel to other people's countries and to come home and to my own and work and be able to move freely and be part of a really successful economy. And I guess that some people didn't think that it was like the trade-offs were worth it, right? They wanted to have their own autonomy over their country. Now, I will say that there are probably influences happening in a lot of our elections here lately that are intentionally trying to divide us a little bit more than we otherwise would be. But it's just sad to see, like, a group of people or a country start to shelter themselves and pull out of important partnerships.
Almost go backwards. Yeah. One thing I heard or read, I should say, pardon, if you look at the voter rate or who voted, unfortunately, it seems that the generation that is kind of leaving us voted for a Brexit. Mm-hmm. Let's say like a 55, 60, 65 year and older. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, the younger generation missed their opportunity to vote enough so that they couldn't scream them. They're upset now, but they didn't go vote.
Yeah.
So actually participating in elections is so relevant because it is. It's like this math nobody understands. Like if 80% of people would not go to work to vote, if 80% would not go to vote and 20% raise their voice, and even if only 60% of those 20% vote somebody for president, 60% of 20%, which is like, you know, is like 12% of 100%. It's like terrible, and they just made democracy.
Yeah.
And it's so important that we really...
Exactly. And people ask me, like, well, Brittany, why don't young people vote at higher rates? I'm like, I have no idea. Like, I'm obviously the wrong person to ask about this because I'm, like, really involved. I vote in my special election school board elections, okay? Like, I'm, like, into voting. I love voting. Some people don't get to do it, and so I take it very seriously. But no, there are a lot of sayings about what you just said, right? I mean, the world is run by those who show up, right? There's that one. There's like, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. There's that one, right? So there, I know it's kind of, that's when we have an agriculture. So, so like, it's like, it just goes to show you that, like, you know, some people are kind of disenfranchised right now and they don't feel like their vote makes a difference. I would beg to differ. I mean, we've had elections in the last couple of years that have been decided by one vote. Or,
can you imagine?
Yeah, like in Virginia, they had one where they literally flipped a coin.
Really?
To decide who won. It's like, that's crazy. Because they had an exact, absolute tie. So yeah, people should vote more.
Yeah. But how do we motivate them? Yeah, that's, I mean, if we knew how to really engage them. But I think we are in a generation where engagement is so relevant again. that it's kind of hopeful.
I'm hopeful.
Yeah.
I'm really hopeful. I think that we have like a really bright future ahead of us.
I think so too. I think there's somewhat of a revolution coming in the United States in particular, and I don't mean like a violent one.
Yeah, I was like, I hope not.
No. Like a revolution, kind of like a renaissance. Let's just say a revolution of maybe knowledge, or
Well,
something's going to happen to the better. I say that for already 10 years, so I said in 20 years. So I think in the next 10 years something's going to happen, and I think maybe more engagement, where people raise their voice and say, hey, no, that's what we want. So that would be what I meant with a revolution, where people say it maybe a little bit more clear even. Yeah, no, I think it's fascinating. I think this 80 days is
80 days.
80
yes.
days
Oh my
counting.
gosh. Yes, and counting. So.
And then one thing that I always stroke me or whatever, elections here are on a Tuesday.
They are always on a Tuesday.
And in Germany, they're always on a Sunday.
Really?
So that everybody can go. I don't understand it. Why is it on a Tuesday? Because you kind of say it's so difficult. You make it not easier for people to go.
Well, that's a whole nother conversation about like how it is to vote in America. But yeah, although to be fair, you can get time off work. Like your employer has to give you time off if you want to go vote. But I understand how that's not.
But then all of a sudden, they didn't like it. You know, so many people that have to work 2 jobs. Maybe they fear to lose one of them, so they have under so much pressure. Despite the fact that they have to give you. I'm not sure. There's a lot of pressure.
I mean, I'm lucky. I have a great employer, and in both of my employers, they would be more than happy to give me the opportunity to go vote. But I understand that some people aren't that lucky.
Yeah.
Or they don't feel like they have the opportunity, and that's why, mail-in ballots have become really popular in some parts of the United States, because you can get your ballot, you can sit at home, you can do all your research, and then you can send it back, and you don't even have to go vote.
Interesting. That's a good point. The mail-in exists for decades, I would say. There's absolutely no reason why it should not be done electronically. Because if we can do it via USPS, if we can do it with a stamp, which is just a different medium, either it's physical.
I'm a definite proponent of having paper ballots, oddly enough. I think it's good to have paper ballots.
Yeah, I think it should be digital. We should just have a voters app. Actually, we should just have a citizens app.
That just sounds like you're asking for trouble.
No, why? No,
because it's good to have a paper trail of who voted.
Digitalized, they're probably getting scanned in anyways.
They are, but
they're getting scanned in to read out.
They are, but
why not
then
just make an interface?
You still have the ballots in case you need to go back and hand count them.
You seem awfully old right now.
What?
I'm just kidding.
Oh, because I don't think that we should have all electronic voting.
Yeah. No, it's interesting.
I don't know.
No, it's a good point. I see it. The physical evidence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of that.
I hope we will have it digitalized 100% eventually, but maybe I'm just ahead of things.
Yeah, maybe you are.
But a good point. We will see. Maybe one day we will have it. But we would potentially overcome the obstacles to vote because of the convenience. And what I think here is also cultural. Like, we like it convenient. We have drive-thrus more and more. So why not make it extremely convenient?
I agree. I think you should be registered to vote when you get your driver's license.
Yeah, and normal in Germany.
Now. Yeah, okay, well, that's normal in Germany. All right, well, that's not necessarily a thing that happens here. I think North Dakota is actually working on that right now.
I think they do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, in fact, I am a dual citizen. So I did go to vote 2 years ago, and
you were registered.
I was registered through my driver's license.
Oh, see.
Yeah,
works great, doesn't it?
It does. It did work at least. Yeah, it does work great. I agree. So yeah, Minnesota, we can learn something from North Dakota. That's rare.
Yeah.
Oops.
Well,
no.
Hey, no, I love North Dakota. That's where I learned to shear sheep. So.
Oh, good. No, I was just joking.
Yeah.
But yeah, good. Well, we will see. 80 days. We will hear from you probably, and maybe some people will meet you knocking on the door. Then they kind of see the face to the voice and can ask you some more questions. Or they can contact you, actually. There's a website, I think.
There is.
It's called Brittney Jones.
Brittney Johnson.
Johnson, I'm sorry about that. Brittney Johnson.
FOR 8A.
Okay.
.com.
I found out that you can Google is really pleasing to you.
Yes. Yes, you can just Google it too.
And then it finds it right away.
I'm also on the Secretary of State website. So
of course.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So
they're there.
Brittney Johnson. I'm sorry. Yeah. Good. Well, I appreciate your
But
time.
yeah, thanks for having me. I hope that we covered lake life for you. Maybe not.
Actually, I thank you for reminding me, because I want to ask every guest at the very end what lake life means to them. So can you please
my gosh,
say what lake life means to you?
Lake life to me is floating down the Otter Tail River with a lemonade in my hand. I know that's a river and it's not a lake, but
it's lake life, lakes country. So
yeah,
your lake life is water, but stream water.
Well, yeah, and I grew up tubing a lot, right? Like a lot, like water tubing a lot. But I don't have a boat anymore, so that's not a thing that I can do. So now it's just floating down the river, which I love too. It's very relaxing, and I'm not getting thrown off a tube or anything. So. And
then it's a long stretch. How long do you float?
I don't know. There are lots of different lengths of stretches. You know, growing up, I did a lot of the ones that are like closer to DL, but now since I'm so close to Otter Tail Lake and Phelps Mill, that I do the one out of Otter Tail Lake to Deer Lake, I think it is, or Phelps Mill to West Lost Lake. So, yeah. And I love lake life. And it's just, we're so lucky here, aren't we, to have such an amazing place to live. It's great.
I know. So. I have a lot of guests every year from Germany, and they don't know what to expect.
Yeah.
And when they feel it and see it, it's definitely, I'm totally sold on it for sure. Yeah.
Yay, good.
Well,
who wouldn't be, right?
I know. Yeah. Do you like lake life in the winter?
Well, sure I do.
I do too.
Yeah. I mean, so because I have a farm, I have like a lot of space. So one of my things is that I go cross country skiing, but I don't think that doesn't really have anything to do with lakes. One thing I remember always doing as a kid was snowmobiling across lakes, but
no, you don't need to focus on the lake.
Okay.
So we live in lakes country, so I seriously think it's year round. We can ice fish, but
sure,
we can do a lot of things, but we can cross country ski. That's a big culture here, I think. I mean, we have a lot of trails. Maplewood State Park has big trails, and Maple Log, and they're all over. It's snowmobiling. We have like hundreds of miles of groomed trails for snowmobiling. Yeah. No, interesting. Okay. Well, thank you very much for an insight in you, and all the best. Good luck.
Thank you.
And talk to you then maybe afterwards.
Yeah, maybe. Hopefully.
Hopefully, yeah.
Either way, right? Either way.
Have a wonderful weekend ahead. Yeah, this was already our newest episode of the Lake Life Weekend podcast. We sure hope you enjoyed it. Tune in again next week with another great guest and updates. Always check out our website, lakelifeweekend.com, and if you have some comments, please feel free to email us at hello@lakelifeweekend.com, and you have a wonderful weekend ahead.